What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my official 2021 NBA mock draft for the top 5. Of course, these teams, could be in different order when it does come to the draft lottery, but I will be looking at, in terms of the 5 worst teams in the league. For example, Houston, who sit at 30, will have the first pick. Again, who knows if they'll the first pick when the actual draft comes around, due to the mysterious draft lottery that always seems to shock people. But I thought that this would be the best way to go about it instead of just simulating my own mock draft. So I guess without further ado, let's get straight into it with the first pick. And the Houston Rockets in my mock draft are going to be, of course, selecting Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma. I think this is the most obvious choice for them, to go out and pick. Again, there has been reports that John Wall might have actually kind of requested a trade. Someone put an Instagram poll up pretty much saying, will John Wall leave or something like that. John Wall himself actually voted leave, which is extremely funny. But even if John Wall does stay on the team, I think there's just no way you can go about not drafting Cade Cunningham. He's a 6'8" point guard that can also guard the shooting guard position. He averages 20.1 points per game, 3.5 assists, and 6.2 rebounds. Some very, very quality stats. Again, his 3-point percentage is also very good on 40%. The only issue in Cunningham's game that I actually see is the playmaking. Of course, 3.5 assists isn't exactly the greatest thing out there, but then when you see players like Darius Garland, who averaged like 3 assists in his college season, now in his second season in the NBA, he's averaging 6 to 7 assists per game. There is always improvement, and again, I could definitely see Cade Cunningham being one of those guys that will definitely average more assists as he does go, in the NBA. So, again, pick 1 for the Houston Rockets, Cade Cunningham. That is an absolutely obvious pick. If John Wall does stay, they'll just play Cunningham at the 2, make him guard the 2. I know they're both ball-predominant guards, but again, they'll make it work, and John Wall would probably eventually get traded anyway. But yes, this is the very obvious decision by the Houston Rockets to draft Cade Cunningham with the first overall pick. At pick number 2, I actually have the Orlando Magic. This is a more weird one, where it's kind of like tossing up between Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, but I think considering the Magic have a lot of guard depth right now, I know that they possibly need a small forward. If they fall down the draft lottery, I could see them taking like Kuminga, but I think right now you kind of go best available, and in my opinion that is Evan Mobley. Now they obviously do have Wendell Carter coming off the bench, well, starting actually now as their center, but I feel like Wendell Carter is kind of that guy to come off the bench and play to 20 to 25 minutes per game guarding the center. He can also guard the power forward position on times as well. He is 6'9", so I feel like he's more of that, explosive center off the bench that can put up a lot of points and play some potential defense here and there. Of course, he's not a great defender, and he's never known to be a great defender, but again, if you get him in the right role, I think he'd be perfect off the bench. But Evan Mobley is a guy that you, of course, cannot go past. He should be the number 2 pick, in my opinion. He is currently averaging 34 minutes per game, 30% from 3. He's gradually improving that jump shot, as most of us do know. He's averaging 16.4 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, and 2.4 assists on a field goal percentage of about 58%. And of course, the big one, which a lot of people are looking at, is 2.9 blocks per game. He is a 7-footer that could even potentially play power forward. We've seen that he's played power forward quite a bit. In fact, ESPN actually has him listed as a power forward. I think his more natural position will probably be center, but again, by the time he develops in the NBA, I could potentially see him going through a hybrid role, similar to how Anthony Davis goes about it, how AD is probably a center, but plays as a, 7-foot, 6'11" type power forward. I think Mobley will be a pretty similar thing. Mobley is a very lanky guy, though, very skinny. I think that his body is, I'm not too sure if it's necessarily ready for the NBA. Again, as we see here, he's averaging about 8.7 rebounds in college. I could see him very much struggling in his first season when it does come to rebounds, just because I don't necessarily think he has an NBA-ready body. You know, we've seen James Wiseman kind of go through this, where Wiseman's averaging less than 6 rebounds in his first season with the Golden State Warriors. So I think that's mainly the issue that you kind of look at if you're the Orlando Magic. But again, looking on as a further thing, I think you pick him over Jalen Green, not just as well because he's better than Jalen Green, but as well as I think the Magic do have, you know, quite a bit of guards on their team. Of course, Markelle Fultz will be the main point guard for the future. Cole Anthony will be the 6th man, I would think. They've also got RJ Hampton, who's actually been playing quite a bit better, you know, since he has been on the team. They've got Gary Harris for another season. Terrence Ross they'll probably trade eventually, but he is still there. And Michael Carter-Williams, who has been pretty loyal and pretty good for Orlando for a couple of years, who I'm sure they'll most likely want to keep. So again, as I was saying, I think they're kind of solidified with their guards. And if they were needing a guard, probably a backup shooting guard in free agency or something like that. Again, they could look to take Jalen Green, but honestly, I think their center/power forward depth is a lot worse right now than what their, you know, kind of guard depth is. Maybe they could even start potentially Evan Mobley and Wendell Carter Jr. on the team at the same time. You know, Wendell Carter Jr. can play center. Mobley can play as that 6'11", a 7-foot power forward, similar to an Anthony Davis role, and then maybe Jonathan Isaac can go back to guarding the small forward. So again, I think there's a lot of room they can work with Evan Mobley, and again, that's why I think they should take Evan Mobley with the 2nd overall pick. With the 3rd overall pick, I have the Detroit Pistons, and now that I've kind of seen that, you know, that the Orlando Magic have taken Evan Mobley, I think this decision is made pretty clear by the Detroit Pistons that they should take Jalen Green. I think Jalen Green would be absolutely perfect for this team. He comes in as a really nice shooting guard. Considering they do lack quite a bit of guard depth as well, I think that this is kind of the move. You know, again, they do have Saddiq Bey as their small forward/power forward. You know, Jeremy Grant is kind of in that very similar position. Killian Hayes, I'd say, is their starting point guard, but considering he actually hurt his hip flexor, which is one of the worst injuries that, of course, you can do in the NBA, it's going to be really hard to see how Killian Hayes is going to go about, you know, his career. We also see they've got Dennis Smith Jr., who I think they'll keep for another season, but their point guard, you know, I feel like they'll give Killian Hayes the chance to see if he can prove himself, even with all the injuries that he has, of course, had. But when it does come to Jalen Green, he actually has been playing with the G League Ignite team, where he has played 15 games on about 32 minutes per game. Some pretty nice stats, you know, for him. He is just one of those guys that is a really, really nice shooter. Like, his 2-point percentage is really good. You know, again, he's averaging 36% from 3, which is decent numbers, but he has been pretty inconsistent at times. He's averaging about 18 points per game, 2.8 assists, and about 4 rebounds per game. Again, 18 points per game is really, really nice, and he's playing against professionals in the G League, so he's already got, you know, that more experience. We've seen how much this helped LaMelo Ball when LaMelo Ball went and played with one of the best leagues in the world, you know, the National Basketball League in Australia. He went and played there, became really the face of the league, and was playing professionals. Of course, his team was getting smacked every week because they were really young, but again, he still showed what he can do, and I feel like he got that real competitive spirit going on. He got a lot more, of course, professional knowledge playing against actual professionals, and I feel like, I'm not too sure if the G League is better than the NBL. Both of the leagues are extremely competitive. Of course, I feel like G League's probably better offensively. NBL is probably better, you know, defensively. But again, I feel like Jalen Green, him playing professional basketball is a great idea for him. I think it made a lot of sense, and I feel like now he's actually going to come in and actually be a very good player, potentially for the Detroit Pistons. And it's going to be really interesting to see how him and a Killian Hayes duo will go, because even though Killian Hayes has had a really bad, of course, rookie season for a guy who went at pick 7, you know, again, the hip flexor, and then he hasn't come back good, obviously, but again, 6.6 points per game is not great, but the 5.4 assists per game does actually stand out to me. Like, if he can partner up with Jalen Green, etc., he might be one of those guys that averages like the 10 and 8, similar to like a Alonzo Ball type player. You know, he can put up his good defense, average a bunch of assists. If he can do that in his career, I think that might be a pretty successful career for him. But it's going to be interesting to see how he would potentially go as a partnership with Jalen Green. But again, Jalen Green is one of my favorite players coming out of this draft class. Like, hasn't been a good defender so far. I think there is a lot of room for him to kind of work on the defensive end, but he is a shooting guard, I believe 6'6", that can potentially play power forward. Small forward rather, so we will get to see how he goes about that. But again, I feel like he'll be mainly playing that shooting guard position, especially on the Detroit Pistons. So that's a very obvious one. Now that we get to the number 4th overall pick, things get a little bit weirder. You know, Oklahoma do have that 4th overall pick where, again, I know some people might be like, oh, who do they take? And then they're going to play SGA as that point guard. Will they do it? Will they not? I think SGA will be moved to the shooting guard position. And I think they will go with Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga. I think that is a very good move for them to potentially make. Of course, Jalen Suggs is listed as a 6'4" point guard. In my opinion, I think he possibly about 6'2", 6'3". I'm not too sure if he's actually 6'4". Usually players get marked down when they come into the NBA, because I believe in college and that they get measured with their shoes on, while in the NBA they have changed that, and I don't think they get measured with their shoes on at all. So I think that's kind of how it works. But again, Jalen Suggs has had a good season as well. He's averaging about 14.4 points per game, 5.3 rebounds on 4.5 assists. Again, he is very, very, raw, but I honestly believe with, again, his defense and his ability to guard the 1 and 2, again, he's only playing 29 minutes per game, so once that gets improved, I could see him maybe having a struggle potentially in his first, season, but I feel like he'll be one of those guys that gets better as the time goes. Of course, 33% from 3 isn't great, but I feel like he's the most raw, out of anyone I've mentioned so far, but I definitely feel like over time, he will slightly improve, and I think if you're OKC, you got to take that chance on him and see how he, will potentially go. But I think, again, a duo of Jalen Suggs and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be a very fun one to watch, and will be one that we could, potentially see in the long term, maybe go pretty far in the NBA. And again, we'll definitely see, he might struggle in his first season or something, but it is going to be a test to see how he can really go. Now, moving on to the 5th pick right now, we actually have the Cleveland Cavaliers, who they're also in a very weird position. I definitely, debated this pick for a long time, because honestly, as a Cavs fan myself, I have a feeling we always fall down in the lottery. Like, we've fallen down quite a bit recently, with the Colin Sexton pick. People were, saying that we could potentially jump up. I'm pretty sure we just, stayed the same at 8. Again, with the Darius Garland pick, we were projected to have pick 2. We dropped to pick 5 for Isaac Okoro. We were supposed to have pick 2. We dropped down to pick 5. It was just lucky that the 2 players we got actually have seemed to be like the bright spots of the Cavs. But again, I could see the Cavs falling down again this year, which absolutely pains me to say, and it is very, very frustrating, of course. But again, I do hold out hope. I hope that the Cavs can get a good pick. But again, I feel like pick 5 to pick 7 is the mark that they'll kind of be picking, about. Again, if it drops down to like pick 7, then I'm really baffled on who they should pick. I think if it goes to like pick 7, I'd probably look at like a Scotty Barnes type of guy who, again, is that small forward / power forward hybrid. Like, he's kind of like Draymond Green. Plays power forward, pretty nice defender. I think he's a bit better shooter than what Draymond is, but he's also got that playmaking going for him. I feel like he's like him. But at pick 5, I would definitely look at, if you're not going to trade down, they could also trade down and maybe try and get like a Jalen Johnson or a Scotty Barnes. But at pick 5, you probably just take best available, which is Jonathan Kuminga, out of the G League Ignite team as well. He is extremely raw. He is probably one of the most raw players in this whole entire draft. Like, I mean, He's played 13 games. He has played, had 33 minutes per game. He's averaging 16 points per game, which is really good. Seems to be a very good defender. I believe he's 6'8", so he'll most likely play power forward, / small forward as well. Be like that forward type of guy. The issue I see with Jonathan Kuminga is his 3-point percentage, which is absolutely terrible. It is 25%, and if you watch this guy shoot, his jump shot is all over the place. Like, if you want to see a guy brick, you'll see Jonathan Kuminga. He has bricked a lot of shots. There has been a lot of air balls. It is going to take an extreme amount of time for him to get that right. And where the Cavs are right now, and their lack of shooting, like Isaac Okoro has been a very rough shooter, even though he's been very good defensively. I feel like there is time, again, Isaac Okoro has improved so much more past the season. But Jonathan Kuminga is a lot more raw than what Isaac Okoro was coming into this. He is 25% from 3 when I think Isaac Okoro was about 30%. So you kind of look at it as, you're like, oh, well, what do you do as the Cavs? Because I don't believe Jalen Johnson is that good of a shooter either. And he guards like that shooting guard, small forward position, the wing. But if you look at Scotty Barnes, who guards that power forward / small forward as well, Scotty Barnes has been known to be, not as good as a scorer as Kuminga, a better playmaker than what, Kuminga is as well. But again, Scotty Barnes is that type of guy where he's also been inconsistent on the 3-point percentage, only on 28%. But he definitely looks like he has room to go and be like a 35%, from 3 shooter. So it is really interesting. Is Scotty Barnes or Jonathan Kuminga? It will be a debate. Kuminga is a lot better than what Barnes is right now, in my opinion. But also, I feel like Barnes could be like that Draymond Green type of guy. While Kuminga's, he's a really interesting one as well, because he'll probably guard that power forward position. But I feel like he might be more of that small forward, position, considering he is 6'8". I feel like if you want to guard power forward, you've got to be about, maybe 6'9", to potentially 6'10". Again, I think 6'9" is kind of the perfect height. And who knows, if Kuminga gets scaled down to 6'7", that is very concerning. He does look 6'8" though, so I'll give him that. It will be really interesting, considering it's the J League. I think they could be measured without shoes, similar to the NBA. So if he's 6'8", and he's good enough defensively, which it does look like he is, then you'd think that the Cleveland Cavaliers would most likely look at taking Jonathan Kuminga in the draft. Alright, now moving on to the 6th overall pick. The Golden State Warriors actually have this pick from the D'Angelo Russell trade, where they traded D'Angelo Russell to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota traded back the first round pick, which is top 3 protected, so if it does fall in the top 3 in the lottery, of course Minnesota will get to keep the pick, but of course there is a much more likely chance that does not happen than it actually does. So projected right now, the Warriors do have the 6th pick, and they are in a very interesting spot. There's a couple of ways I could see them going about this. For example, if they don't bring back Kelly Oubre, they will most likely go out and get like a Jalen Johnson type of guy, just because he can guard, the 1 through 4. It does seems to be a very, very capable defender. He has the height to go with that as well. But honestly, I do believe the Golden State Warriors will most likely be keeping their pick. So, unless they, of course, go and, trade it for a star or something like that. And then I also do believe that the Golden State Warriors will most likely be keeping Kelly Oubre as well, especially if they can get him on cheap. So pretty much at this point, I've kind of gone for the only option, which is, I see, taking best available. And in my opinion, I'd probably say that Keon Johnson might be the next best available. So I've actually got the Golden State Warriors taking Keon Johnson with the 6th overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft. Of course, he has some pretty interesting stats in terms of he's not exactly a high scorer or anything like that. Like, he scores 11.3 points per game. He has 3.5 rebounds and 2.5 assists. So you might be like, well, his stats aren't exactly great. How is he going to go this high in the draft? And that's just because of the raw potential this guy does have. Of course, he is actually listed at 196 centimeters or 6'5", and is very much accustomed to guarding 1 through 3. He is an excellent defender, and he can literally you can give him the job of going to the best defender, the best point guard rather, on the team, and he will lock up that guy. Like, let's just say you're playing the Trailblazers and you wanted to go on Damian Lillard. Of course, he might not be able to do it in his first season because of the lack of experience, but this guy does have potential to be a very, very good, defender in the league. A guy that I think he's kind of similar to is a shorter version of Isaac Okoro from the last draft. Isaac Okoro, who got drafted the Cleveland Cavaliers at pick 5. He can guard 1 through 3, while I think Keon Johnson is a little bit smaller, but he's definitely got the length, and he does have the potential as well to, go into a much better scorer on the time as well. Again, he's averaging that 11 points per game with terrible 3-point percentage on like 28%. But there does look to be a lot more room to improve, and he is a relatively raw guy in this draft. But the thing is, his defense is outstanding. There is some debate on who the best defender in this draft class is. In my opinion, it actually could be him. And I think that, he has very similar stats to Isaac Okoro. What Isaac Okoro had in college as well. Again, Isaac Okoro managed to go at, pick 5, and in his first season with the Cavs, you saw every game as he progressed, he started to get way better offensively, and I have a feeling Keon Johnson will be a very similar, type of play. He's only 19 years of age, so when he comes in the NBA, he might struggle in his first, season or two. But again, I think the Warriors, who will have Klay Thompson coming back, who, again, will be coming back from the really bad couple of injuries he's had. And then I think, they might bring back Kent Bazemore. But on the guard depth, I don't really like their depth, in terms of guard as well. Steph Curry and Klay Thompson will be there. I pray Curry and Klay don't get injured, especially for Warriors fans. And again, you've got Kent Bazemore as well, who will probably play a bit of small forward. But other than that, you don't really have anyone else. Jordan Poole's expected to be getting traded in a package to potentially get like a star player, which has been, highly rumored. And then there's like no guards at all that the Warriors really have. So I think improving their guard depth and getting a dude like Keon Johnson would actually be a pretty nice situation for them to potentially, go down that direction. And of course, in my opinion, he's probably best available. There is a lot of room for him to improve. He's very raw, but I definitely think he has the capability to do that. And learning behind one of the best perimeter defenders in Klay Thompson, wow, this guy could be an absolute freak. But of course, moving on now to the 7th overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, we've also got the Toronto Raptors, who I was looking at a couple things as well on who they should potentially pick. I looked at positional needs, best available, all that type of stuff. And the end result I've kind of come up with is Davion Mitchell, who I think they should definitely take at pick 7. He actually kind of reminds me of like a Kyle Lowry type player. And the reason I've actually got them taking another guard is because I think he is one of the best available. But not just that, Kyle Lowry, who is 35 years of age, is definitely up there in age now. And it is reported he will most likely be leaving this season to go to a more contending team like Philadelphia or Miami, etc. So I don't think he will be resigning, which means you could, go and roll Fred VanVleet at, the point guard, which is highly rumored that they will do. And they might look to take a shooting guard. But the thing that I kind of liked is I thought Davion Mitchell, who is 6'2", he's one of those guys that is another very, very good perimeter defender, just like Keon Johnson. These two are, again, two of the best defenders in the draft class. The difference between Davion Mitchell is he's a little bit less raw. He averages about 14 points per game and is a bit of a better playmaker on 5.5 assists. And he is a great shooter on 45% from 3. So again, you might be like, well, why would the Golden State Warriors potentially look to take Keon Johnson over Davion Mitchell? And that's just because Davion Mitchell is actually 22 years of age. He is actually up there in age. And again, those 14 and 5.5 assists and whatnot are very good numbers. But you got to think that this dude's got 3 years of experience more on Keon Johnson. And they're both probably equal in terms of defense. The thing is, the reason why I think Keon Johnson will go higher is just because he's 3 years younger. He is a a lot more raw. But again, I think has potential to be one of the best players potentially in this class. It will just really come down to it. While Davion Mitchell, I think would actually be really nice for the Raptors as well, as you can actually put him alongside Fred VanVleet and kind of see how that will, of course, go. He's 6'2", very good perimeter defender, can play make, but can also play off ball, hitting 45% from 3. He is 22 years of age, and I think that if the Raptors want to make a bounce back and get to the playoffs very quick, I think he'll be able to, potentially help out and actually come along with that. So, I think that is definitely who the Toronto Raptors should potentially look to take. Of course, if Davion Mitchell goes to the Warriors, maybe they're looking to get more of a ready NBA player, which I don't know if they would be, because they took James Wiseman knowing he wouldn't be a ready NBA player. So I think they would kind of go with Keon Johnson, but if not, then Warriors would go with Davion Mitchell and the Raptors would get Keon Johnson. So they'd probably be swapped around. But I think I really do like these selections here, and I definitely think, the Toronto Raptors should select Davion Mitchell at pick number 7. Now moving on to the New Orleans Pelicans, you have the pick number 8. Had a very, very disappointing season. I actually have them selecting Corey Kispert. Now, I know that some people have him at about 10 to 12. I've actually decided to take him a little bit higher here and get him at 8, just because I think he really does fit the New Orleans Pelicans and their positional needs. He is scoring 18.6 points per game on 5 rebounds, but the thing which is the best thing about him is he's actually lethal from 3. He is 44% from 3, which is absolutely insane. The only negative about him, again, is he is 22 years of age, so he's not extremely young or anything like that. But again, I think for the Pelicans, I don't think they're really worrying about that. It is clear that they desperately need a 3-point shooter to come into this starting lineup, because having a starting lineup where really the only good shooter, efficiently got is Brandon Ingram, that's pretty crazy. Of course, they've got Lonzo Ball, but he can be very inconsistent sometimes, and I think he might be potentially leaving in free agency, which would be obviously a very bad thing for the Pelicans. But again, if he's going to get a huge contract from someone, and you don't want to overpay for a player that doesn't even look like they're very keen on. Another thing that I don't really know about Kispert is, I think on this Pelicans team, he'd actually need to start at shooting guard. But again, he is 6'7", and he's probably not as fast as most potential shooting guards out there, from what I've seen. I just don't know how he would go at that. I think the height would kind of be a little bit of a worry. But you know what? I think if they think it can work, you got to go get him, because you got to go get some spacing in this starting lineup. And let's just say Lonzo leaves next year, which I feel like he will. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker kind of steps into that starting 5. Probably starts at the point guard, I would assume. If not, they probably got, Lewis Jr., who might come into that starting position. But I think it probably would be Alexander Walker. Then you got Kispert next to him. Then you got Ingram. Then you got Zion. And then you got, of course, Steven Adams. So, again, getting a Kispert finally brings in some much-needed spacing to the team. So, I very much do like that for the New Orleans Pelicans. And that's why I have decided to select him with the 8th overall pick. Now, moving on to pick number 9. This is probably one of my favorite picks in the whole draft, if I'm being completely honest. And that's actually the Sacramento Kings selecting Scotty Barnes with the 9th overall pick. Again, I think that, yes, you could say they've already got their power forward in Marvin Bagley, but considering he's not really happy with the team, he hasn't done much, looks like he could potentially be leaving a free agency, or they could be trading him. It looks like they might need a new power forward, and the type of guy Scotty Barnes is absolutely extraordinary. He has so much potential in this draft. The guy that I'd really like to compare him to is actually Draymond Green. Scotty Barnes he's definitely a forward, 6'9". I'd say he's more of a power forward than small forward, but the thing is, he's got that Draymond Green playmaking about him, where, again, in college, he only averaged about 5 assists or so per game, but again, when you look at some of the factors that might have gotten into that, maybe that wasn't what the scenario was. Maybe he could have averaged more, maybe he could have done a little bit more to get more of his teammates involved, and the actual numbers were 4.1 assists per game. But the thing is, this guy has the ability where a couple of years of experience into this guy, and I could see him being a similar dude to Draymond Green. He is a very, very good defender. He can average 10 points per game, so decent scoring, 4 rebounds, and can get you 4.1 assists per game, which I think will definitely translate to the NBA and potentially go up. And who knows, a couple seasons in it, he could be averaging like a 7 assists. And then, again, he's also got 28% from 3, which is not exactly great. Some people might say, well, they've already got De'Aaron Fox, they've already got their number 1 playmaker. Why would they go and get like another one? And that's because Scotty Barnes is so much more than that. And you look at Steph Curry and Draymond Green, they work really, really well together. And they've got this whole, they like to do a lot of screen plays, etc. Draymond Green's an incredible playmaker to him. I feel like they could have a similar thing with De'Aaron Fox and Scotty Barnes. And they could also have a thing with when De'Aaron Fox goes for a rest and Scotty Barnes can become the main playmaker. And then when Scotty Barnes goes for a rest, Fox can become the main playmaker. And then when they're on the court for like the same time, they can try and run plays on how Steph Curry and, of course, Draymond Green, do it. I believe Luke Walton, who will be guaranteed another season with the Kings for some reason, he actually has had experience with coaching Draymond Green, Steph Curry. I believe he was the assistant coach for Golden State for a little bit. So again, he would know some of the plays. It would be very interesting to see if he could kind of, connect that. And honestly, I believe Barnes could be the 6th best player in this draft. To get him at pick, a 9 for the Sacramento Kings, it's a pretty good result. And I think they would definitely be pretty happy with this one. So I've actually got, the Sacramento Kings selecting Scotty Barnes with the 9th overall pick. With the 10th overall pick, I have the Orlando Magic, and they've actually got this pick from Chicago revolving in the Nikola Vucevic trade. And with the 10th overall pick, I do have the Orlando Magic selecting Jalen Johnson. I believe Jalen Johnson is best available here, and I know that his season with, Duke might not have been exactly great, but I do see a lot of potential in this guy. I do see that he has the defensive, capability to be a right player eventually. 45% from 3 was really, really good. I know some people have their worries about that translating to the NBA. Look, if he has a couple bad seasons from shooting from 3, I'm sure he'll learn how to, get more consistent with it eventually. He does average 11.2 points per game, 6.1 rebounds. And he can guard, 1 through 3, which seems to be pretty nice as well. I've even seen him just be like a 6'9" shooting guard, which is absolutely crazy. I think he'll be more of a small forward in the NBA though. But I do really like him with the Orlando Magic. I think he would be a really nice guy to come in, he can be best available to come in with their team. They've got enough point guards and shooting guards. Wing plays, you could say they've got a couple of them, but considering Otto Porter will most likely be going, in free agency, Gary Harris will probably be getting, traded or limited minutes. I think Jalen Johnson would be a really cool guy to come into this Orlando Magic team and just help out with some more depth. Alright, now moving on to the next pick, I actually have the Charlotte Hornets selecting with pick 11, and with pick 11, I do have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Isaiah Jackson. Now, the Charlotte Hornets are in a very weird situation right now where I feel like they desperately need to draft a center in this year's draft. And the weird thing is, though, there aren't exactly too many centers besides like Evan Mobley, who will for sure go in like the top 7 of the draft. So there's no way really I think the Hornets can get, a player like Mobley. Other than that, there's not really anyone. I've decided to select Isaiah Jackson here because he is 6'11", and even though he has played quite a bit of power forward, so he hasn't really been, I don't believe too much of a center so far, but I think he can definitely develop into that, as I believe not so long ago, I think he was like 6'10". He has grown a little bit. He is 6'11" now. And the thing is, the reason why I like Isaiah Jackson for the Charlotte Hornets is not because of his stats. His stats aren't exceptional. He's averaging 8.4 points per game and 6.6 rebounds. And really 0% from 3. But I very, very much do like his defensive ability. He's been known to be a very, very good defender in this draft. A very, very good rim protector. And can even go out and sometimes defend, the perimeter, especially against those power forwards that can space the ball. But I think moving forward in the NBA, I think Isaiah Jackson will be moved to the center position, especially if he measures at 6'11" when he does get drafted. I also do believe, again, he would add that much-needed interior defense, which the Charlotte Hornets really lack of. Like, they don't have any interior defense at all. So I do think, selecting Isaiah to help out with LaMelo Ball is the right choice. I think that's kind of where you go. And then I think you probably go and, draft it, or go and sign, rather, an actual capable defensive center, and then maybe bring Jackson off the bench in his first season. So that's what I do have. I have pick 11. The Charlotte Hornets will be selecting Isaiah Jackson. Now, with a pick number 12, the San Antonio Spurs are also in a weird situation, but I actually have them selecting Josh Giddey, which I really, really like as a pick. Now, Josh Giddey is actually from Australia. He played in the NBL, and if that sounds familiar to you, and that's because a lot of players in the NBA are now actually coming from the NBL. We saw LaMelo Ball go down there, play in the NBL. He became so much of a better player. We saw RJ Hampton go down there. He played for the New Zealand Breakers. He was a much better player as well. LaMelo played for Illawarra. And now we've got Mojave King, who's supposed to be getting drafted in this draft. He's from New Zealand. I believe he's playing for the Cairns Taipans, which is in Queensland, Australia. And then now we got Josh Giddey, who is coming from, the Adelaide 36ers, which of course is in South Australia. So he is very much like LaMelo Ball. I mean, he is a very, very similar player. He's a very tall point guard coming into this draft that actually has some really, really decent stats. Like, this guy will be a steal, whoever gets him, because he is averaging 11 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists as well on about 32 minutes. And you might be like, well, that is pretty good stats. Like, he is averaging a triple-double, but that's, nearly averaging, rather, a triple-double, but that's probably not, necessarily means he's going to be a steal, right? And I disagree, because if we look at RJ Hampton's stats in the NBL, they weren't, terrific. RJ Hampton was just an average role player on his New Zealand Breakers teams. They weren't exceptional stats, and he still managed to go in the first round to the Orlando Magic, and he's actually had a very underrated, to the Denver Nuggets, rather, and he's actually had an underrated season since getting drafted to the Magic, where he has improved so much. And again, a lot of people see that he could actually potentially be a really nice starting player, and his stats weren't exactly that great. And then you look at Josh Giddey, who's one of the best players on his team, averaging these stats, which is just a little bit worse than what LaMelo Ball did when he played in Australia. I think Josh Giddey is going to be an absolute freak. He will be insane. And I think if you're a Spurs fan, you're getting an absolute great player here with the 12th overall pick. I think it's really cool because I think, DeRozan will probably be leaving on free agency. There's rumors that Patty Mills will either be leaving in free agency, or he'll be taking a little bit of a step back next season, might not be playing as many minutes. There was some even rumors that he could be going and playing in the NBL, because if you didn't know, he's from Australia. But who really knows what's going to happen? I think it would be really, really interesting to select Josh Giddey, start him at point guard, and then you'd probably, still roll with Murray at shooting guard, and you just maybe share the ball between them. Both of them are very, very capable defenders as well. So it would be very, very interesting to see how that could all potentially go. And yeah, Josh Giddey, I'm telling you right now, if he falls past pick 15, he could be one of the biggest steals in the draft. I think he's probably worth about pick 12, and I believe the San Antonio Spurs should be selecting him at that pick 12 position. Now, moving on to pick 13, I have the Indiana Pacers, and with the 13th overall pick, I'll actually have the Indiana Pacers selecting Franz Wagner, who is a small forward out of Michigan, I do believe. He is also a very, very interesting player, and kind of fills in that lackluster small forward position that the Pacers don't really have. TJ Warren, who's probably almost their best player, with Sabonis, of course. He's missed, a lot of the season, didn't get to play with them to lead them to the playoffs. There is a huge rumor that TJ actually wants out, which would be a very, very bad thing for the Indiana Pacers. But whether or not TJ Warren comes back or not, I still think they should go with Franz Wagner at this small forward position. And he kind of just fits that Indiana Pacers mold. He's averaging 12.5 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and 3 assists. Some decent stats. 34% from 3. It does look like he'll eventually grow to be a capable shooter, after he actually averaged 31% his last season in college before the 34% season. But the thing is, he's a very, very good defender. He can He's a capable interior defender. He's a capable perimeter defender. He's just a little bit inconsistent on this scoring and whatnot, but he kind of fits that Pacers mold of being a really, really nice defender that they've kind of had for, you know, a long time. And I think he would be a great replacement for TJ Warren if Warren was to leave. I don't know if he'd start in his first season. There's a rumor that if Warren leaves, the Pacers would be willing to blow it up. I'm not too sure if they should blow it up because they've got Karis LeVert, you know, who's still there. He's a nice player. I think they'll keep. You know, Brogdon's still there. They might trade him. There's a rumor TJ would like to stay with the Pacers, but I also feel like a team like the Trailblazers will be trying to get him. There's a rumor Miles Turner will get traded. Jeremy Lamb might get traded. Pretty much the only player safe is like Domantas Sabonis. So if you want to start off fresh, I feel like Franz Wagner is a cool small forward to kind of bring in on this team. And who knows, he might eventually develop that three-point shooting. But of course, I still think re-signing TJ Warren should be a priority, even if they are thinking of blowing it up. But yeah, for some reason, I have a feeling Warren could be one of the shock leaves in free agency. Who he'll go to, I'm not exactly too sure. You know, as a Cavs fan, I would kind of like to see us, you know, give him a contract because I think he kind of fit in perfect, bring that nice spacing. So I'd very much like to see him come to the team. But hey, a boy can dream, right? But moving on to the 14th pick now, we do have the Memphis Grizzlies, who I actually have them selecting Tre Mann, who is 6'5". He is a guard. He has some nice playmaking here and there. Seems to be an average defender. He's just, you know, kind of average at everything. He seems like one of those guys that will be a very, very long-term development player. Like, I mean, his scoring is pretty good though. 16 points per game. That is really, really nice. He has played 2 seasons in college. 40% from 3 is also really nice, but a 45% field goal is pretty average. But I definitely feel like he has potential. I'm not too sure if that 3-point percentage will translate to the NBA and that 3.5 assists as well. But I do see some potential in playmaking. I think that if he can get that 3-point percentage to translate to the NBA, it'd be alright. The scoring maybe as well, but again, Memphis Grizzlies, considering they've got, you know, Trey Jones, who might get a bigger offer by a different team. They might even just look to maybe not bring him back. I think they'll be looking maybe for another backup guard. I do really think, though, that getting a backup guard like Tre Mann would actually be pretty cool, because he does add some nice defense, which is that grit and grind Memphis way, I suppose. And he's a pretty decent shooter as well. He's just got to develop that playmaking. But who knows, if you get him to be a nice defender, you know, consistently, get him to guard that shooting guard position, I think it'd actually be a pretty fun experiment to see if Tre Mann would be cool with the Grizzlies. I feel like he might even be best available on this board as well. I think he probably is. I struggled to find who the Grizzlies should select at 14, because they're actually in a pretty cool spot, and I feel like they really need to go out and get a star. I don't know who it's going to be, but a star for this team would help out Ja Morant and Jonas Valanciunas and Jaren Jackson so much. Who that star would be, who knows, even a TJ Warren. Like, that's another player, you know, I mentioned just earlier, TJ Warren, who I think he could potentially leave the Spurs, who really knows. He would be a very cool player to get on this Grizzlies team. Like, that would be a big three, TJ Warren, Ja Morant, and, you know, Jaren Jackson, with some incredible role players like, you know, Dylan Brooks and Jonas Valanciunas. So who even really knows? But, of course, I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for all the latest NBA content and NBA news. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to my sports channel, you know, and this is our channel, obviously, and my IRL/Long channel, and my gaming channel, which I'll link in the description down below. Don't forget to check out my podcast as well if you haven't already. Links for them will all be in the description down below. But as I was saying, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.